Hi everyone, it's Renee Zaia here from Make the Move Coaching and welcome to video 2 on understanding painful emotions. And today's video is about anger. So when I think about anger, I always think of Yoda from Star Wars where he goes, I sense anger, deep anger. And you know, the thing I love about Yoda when he does that is that he can sense anger, and it's so important to understand our anger. So in today's video, we're going to be exploring anger specifically. Anger is one of the 6 umbrellas of the painful emotions. So let's get right into it. So I will just adjust the screen. Okay, so in today's video, we're going to be understanding the scale of anger-based emotions because there's over 100 feelings or emotions, but there's the primary umbrella of anger. We're also going to understand the purpose of anger and also the impacts of anger if not managed responsibly. So coming back to the umbrella, we have anger, which is one of the 6 emotions, along with fear, sadness, shame, hurt, and guilt. So anger. So where does anger even come from? So just a reminder, if you missed the introductory video, that as humans, we're made up of our experiences, which can be from the past, our positive and negative experiences, trauma. Some of those things turn into limiting beliefs, and limiting beliefs are usually held in the subconscious, but we can become aware of them consciously if we work with a coach or other health professional. We also have our personality. So within our personality, we have different managers, if you want to call them that, where we take on sort of different traits like, or archetypes like the rescuer or the fixer, or sometimes even the wounded child, or, you know, there's many different parts of us that help us just navigate life. There's also our central nervous system. So even in our physiology, our brain, our nerves, our senses are all hardwired to actually have this human experience. So our thoughts, our feelings, and those are the things that sort of take in the external experience and process it and protect us as well. We also have thoughts. So only 5% of your thoughts come from the conscious mind. So 95% coming from the subconscious mind just being the automatic functions, right? And if limiting beliefs are also in the subconscious mind, then what chance do we really have of getting out ahead of painful emotions with a conscious thought, which is why I teach mastering your emotions. So in the roots of our tree of ourselves, those are some of the fundamentals that influence how we, or determine how we experience life. And then there's usually an event. So the event can be something positive, something negative. It could be a difficult conversation with someone. It could be an actual loss, whether it be loss of job, loss of a loved one. And then based on the roots within us and then triggered by that event, we have a series of emotions. Now, if the emotion is anger in particular, the anger can manifest in a number of different emotions, which we'll explore in a moment on the scale of anger. And obviously, as I've mentioned before, anger, any emotion can cause physical symptoms. So when we're angry, you know, muscles can tighten. You know, sometimes, you know, the blood rushes to our limbs because we're getting ready to be in the fight mode of fight or flight. And there's a whole bunch of other physical symptoms as well. So this scale is really, really important to understand. Okay, so starting on this side here, some of the mild versions of anger under the umbrella of anger are things like feeling annoyed. And as we move up the scale, the intensity of those feelings can magnify in terms of, you know, the most extreme of anger, which is along the lines of being enraged or hatred. Now, I do want to point out that this scale is not absolute, and we'll have different perceptions of whether, you know, resentment is more intense than feeling agitated, or whether, you know, enraged is more inflated than hatred. This is not an absolute scale. You know, you are the master of your life, and how you perceive emotions is up to you. So this is a general guide, okay? So don't take it as an absolute. But what it does point out to us, though, is how sometimes in the early experiences of something that we're having, we can start off with mild forms of anger, which could be under the influence of irritation, agitated, being even mildly frustrated, sometimes jealousy comes in, and then resentment. And as we go through that, if we leave some of those emotions or feelings unmanaged, it can escalate into, you know, pure anger, feeling inflamed, enraged, and hatred. I do also want to point out that you don't always necessarily go up the scale. Depending on the event you experience, you could come in at instant rage or instant anger. But the question you need to ask yourself is why is that actually the case? And that's something we can explore in coaching as well. We explore limiting beliefs or some of those internal drivers, or even unhealed trauma or events that from the past that have that sort of, you know, anger just almost simmering below the surface, you know. Wayne Dyer has a really great saying. He says, if you squeeze an orange, what comes out? And it's orange juice. But if you get squeezed, especially in modern life where there's a lot of pressure, what are the emotions that predominantly come out? And some people really struggle with anger, okay? Sometimes you don't need to scratch the surface that much for there to be the expression of those feelings of anger. So that's the scale. So the purpose of anger, there are very positive things about anger. So it tells us if our boundaries have been breached, and that could be our physical boundaries. It could be if we've been disrespected or treated poorly. So, you know, when it comes to our internal guidance system, this is where the emotions are actually really important as well. It can also trigger the need to protect ourselves. So anger is mostly associated with the fight response, okay, because we're mustering up that anger, and it helps us to assert our boundaries and also our standards. It tells us if our morals or values have been breached as well, and can indicate a really strong sense of justice. So the strong sense of justice can come about through events. For example, if you see something on TV and you feel quite, you know, upset or enraged about that situation because there's been you know, an injustice, that anger is telling us that something's important to us and that we don't like to see other people experience injustice. And ultimately can even compel us to take positive action. So, you know, some people are quite passionate about the environment, and when they see a lot of environmental degradation, it can compel them to do like petitions. And even more recently with the murder of George Floyd, there's been a lot of anger expressed about the injustice in that situation as well. So people take action. So anger is not all that bad if we understand how to use it and what it's actually telling us. However, if we don't understand it properly and it's not managed responsibly, anger can impact the liver and the gallbladder. So that's from traditional Chinese medicine. The liver and the gallbladder are partner organs, and it can impact the liver's functions and the gallbladder. And if you're really interested in how amazing the liver is, read a book called Liver Rescue by the medical medium Anthony Williams, and he goes into really deep detail about this amazing super organ called the liver. Untreated anger can also result in skin inflammation. So, you know, the anger coming out towards the external parts of the body through the skin. It can create muscle tension and can affect blood pressure and so forth. From a mental health perspective, it can cloud our judgment. We might not be able to think objectively because we're experiencing so much anger. And also when we're in a very emotional state too, with the brain, we go from the prefrontal cortex to actually the limbic system, right? And so the prefrontal cortex, bit of a mouthful there, is all about logic and understanding. But when we go to the limbic brain, which is the emotional brain, which is really fight or flight or our survival, we don't always have access to the front part of the brain, which is logic and understanding. So we're not always making the best decisions or you know, demonstrating the best behaviours if we're quite angry. In terms of relationships, it can impact relationships in a damaging way. So taking our anger out on other people, usually the people closest to us, because they're the most understanding and forgiving. It can lead to heated or aggressive arguments, but also from an isolation perspective, people tend to avoid people that have got anger issues or who are predominantly angry. So those people can feel quite disconnected and isolated, which is never good from a health perspective. From a behaviour perspective, anger can also you know, cause some sort of addictions. It's different for different people. There's no absolutes. Some people are drawn to more alcohol because sometimes alcohol, there's a perception that it relaxes us and we chill out a bit. And sometimes in terms of our behaviour, you know, anger can manifest in physical aggression, either towards ourselves or to others, which is not healthy either. So there you have it, lots of positives and also impacts of anger. So in summary, anger has a positive purpose. It helps us with our sense of justice, indicates a breach of morals or values, and can compel us to take positive action. But if not managed responsibly, can have really significant physical, mental, relationship and behavioural impacts, particularly also to the liver and the gallbladder. It is important to notice the early signs of anger and take positive action to minimise the risk of those smaller anger-based emotions like frustration, agitation, escalating into bigger ones like being inflamed or rage. But also equally, as I mentioned, depending on the scenario, your anger response might be proportional to the event as well. So a very significant event might trigger a really strong anger response. A minor event might trigger a lower vibration anger like frustration or agitation. So that's anger. And next video, we will be exploring sadness. So that's all I have for the video for today. And that is anger. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions about anger or any of the other painful emotions, drop them in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care now. Bye.